I want you to, like, imagine something for a second. Picture the world's most famous passive observer.
Right, the Mona Lisa.
Exactly, the Mona Lisa. She is hanging there behind the bulletproof glass in the Louvre, just enduring centuries of millions of people staring at her, projecting their own thoughts onto that famous half smile.
Yeah, it's a very static existence.
Totally. Now, imagine she suddenly decides she is completely exhausted from just watching us. So she steps out of her heavy wooden frame, walks right out of the museum, and drops a relentless, pounding techno club album.
I mean, it is an incredibly jarring visual, taking the ultimate symbol of timeless, silent contemplation and throwing her directly into the center of a strobe-lit, deafening dance floor.
Right.
You are dragging a subject defined by stillness into the absolute, unforgiving velocity of the modern world.
And welcome to today's deep dive, because that is exactly what we are getting into. We are exploring the creator's notes, the lyric sheets, and a narrative companion short story for a truly mind-bending project.
It's massive.
It really is. It's a 2-hour and 10-minute concept album titled '𝗧𝗔𝗧𝗔𝗡𝗏, Split Consumption. And our mission today is to track the transformation of this classic subject through an intricate 7-stage narrative arc.
Which is such a cool framework.
Yeah, we are going to explore the literal technical collision between analog origins and digital distortion. And most importantly, we want to figure out what this collision of Renaissance art and modern digital identity means for you, the listener, in an age where we all consume media way faster than it can actually form any real meaning.
The premise goes far beyond, like, a typical musical experiment. It is a full philosophical exploration of what happens to identity when it is subjected to algorithmic consumption.
Yeah.
We are looking at a subject forced to adapt to a system that demands constant, immediate output.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we have to start with how an album like this even exists in the first place. We are starting at the beginning of the narrative arc, a phase the creator calls the fracture.
Right.
The descent. Yeah, it is the transition from being a timeless observer to suddenly experiencing fragmented, chaotic participation. And the actual tech stack used to build this album is, it's wild.
The methodology is fascinating. The creator didn't just, sit down and write these tracks on a keyboard. They reverse engineer this entire 2-hour album from just 7 meme images of the Mona Lisa.
Wait, just 7 memes?
Just 7. Looking at this from the perspective of an AI art researcher, the process is basically a masterclass in translation. They used an AI stack that pulled from ChatGPT to interpret the visual semiotics of the memes.
So, like, translating the visual irony into actual narrative text.
Exactly. And then they fed that text into Google Flow Music to generate the raw audio stems.
But there was a very specific, kind of mysterious variable in that tech stack. The creator notes called it the human element, all caps.
Right.
And they built the whole thing inside an alpha version of Audacity 4 running on a Linux Ubuntu operating system. Why go through all that convoluted technical routing?
What's fascinating here is that the tech stack itself is the metaphor. Generative AI naturally wants to create something mathematically smooth, predictable.
Sure, let's be perfect.
Right. But the creator introduced this human element, which the notes describe as a proprietary intent filter, to basically force human unpredictability, errors, and emotional bias back into the machine's logic.
Oh, wow.
And running it on an unstable alpha version of a software program guarantees glitches and crashes. They deliberately designed a fragile, volatile system because it perfectly mirrors the thematic fracture of the subject.
So it's a literal identity split happening simultaneously in the software's architecture and in the album's narrative.
Exactly.
That structural instability bleeds right into the music of the first 2 narrative stages.
Mm.
The album opens with the prelude, or the fragmentation, on a track called Seamline.
The sound design on that one is incredible.
It really is. It starts off as minimal techno at a very steady 122 beats per minute. And it begins with this warm analog tape warble. It feels old.
Yeah, very nostalgic.
But slowly, that take sound starts warping and breaking into this hyper-modern, aggressive distortion. You literally hear her waking up in the lyrics. The line is, "Half of me is lost in time, half of me begins to crave."
She is splitting. The observer is dying and the performer is being born. And this pulls us directly into the second stage, immersion.
Right.
The track is called Sugar Protocol, and the tempo immediately bumps up to 126 BPM. Now, in electronic music, pushing the tempo up even a few beats per minute significantly alters the body's physiological response.
Like your heart rate speeds up.
Exactly. The heart rate literally tries to entrain to the kick drum, Contemplation is being entirely replaced by physical sensation and pure consumption.
The lyric that captures that shift perfectly is, "Color drips into my veins."
Yeah.
I mean, it makes me think of a mechanical system getting totally overloaded.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, imagine an antique, weight-driven grandfather clock that has kept perfect slow time for 300 years. And suddenly, someone unplugs the weights and wires the clock's delicate internal gears directly into a high-voltage, modern power grid.
Right, would spin out of control.
Exactly. The gears are spinning so fast they blur, the metal is heating up, and it is thrilling for about 2 seconds before you realize the machine is going to tear itself apart. She has tasted the hyper-stimulating algorithm, and she is instantly addicted to that surge of power.
And that mechanical overload is exactly what we see next. Because she has tasted that digital immersion, that pure voltage, she now has to face the overwhelming reality of the system she just entered.
Because you can't sustain that.
No, you cannot consume endlessly at that speed without it doing something catastrophic to your original architecture. Which brings us to the next phase of her transformation, the collision and the loop of consumption.
Right, so we move into the third stage of the arc, rebellion, or the awakening. This is where the tension really peaks. Track 3 is called Observer Error.
Yeah.
We shift away from the glossy minimal sound and dive straight into raw industrial techno.
And the BPM climbs even higher, up to 128.
Yes, the soundscape becomes incredibly aggressive here. You have jagged glitch rhythms and these highly distorted, kind of dissonant synth pads.
The original analog self is actively resisting the surveillance and the extraction of the digital age. She is fighting the very system she just merged with.
The core conflict of this entire project is laid out so clearly in the lyrics of this track. She sings, "I was built to simply see, now they're moving through me."
A digital music historian would look at that lyric and see staggering moral implications. The creator's notes explicitly ask us to consider the ethics of this kind of consumption.
In what way?
Well, we are taking historical art that was painstakingly crafted for centuries of quiet, isolated, slow observation and forcing it into the relentless high-bandwidth velocity of modern content feeds.
Right, turning a masterpiece into a TikTok.
Exactly. The historical question is, does she lose her humanity in this loop? When you take a masterpiece and turn it into a meme or just a piece of background content, is her original essence destroyed by the algorithm?
And according to the narrative progression, that destruction supposedly happens in the fourth stage, collapse, or the performer. We hit track 4, called Lick Loop.
Which is intense.
It is peak time techno blazing at a 130 BPM. She stops fighting. She fully submits to the algorithm. The lyrics are literally just again, lose myself inside the spin. Repetition has entirely replaced her identity.
She has been hollowed out. Earlier, she sang that taste replaces memory, but now she says, loop the motion, loop the sound, let the meaning break down.
Yeah.
From a historical perspective, this is the ultimate tragedy of the digital age. The painting has been reduced to a GIF. She's become nothing but a localized performance, completely stripped of her original depth and context.
Okay, I am actually going to push back heavily on that interpretation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think she has been hollowed out at all. I mean, is it becoming a loop really a complete loss of humanity, or is it just the only way to survive in a hostile environment?
That's an interesting angle.
You close her at the bridge of Lick Loop. Tucked right inside all that repetition, she sings, "Shallow doesn't mean I'm gone, it's a place I build upon." And then she follows it up with, "Even loops can hide a truth. Even noise can be a root." I don't think repetition is the death of meaning here. I think she is building a shield. She is surviving the only way she can in a 130 BPM world. The loop isn't a failure, it's a brand new heartbeat.
Well, a historian might argue that a shield that prevents anyone from seeing the original painting means the painting effectively no longer exists.
Sure.
If all we interact with is the shallow loop, the depth is functionally dead to the observer. However, I see the narrative thread you are pulling on. You are arguing that the core identity hasn't been erased, it is just retreated beneath the noise to protect itself.
Exactly.
It is a forced evolution, a way to exist on the surface without entirely vacating the depths.
Yes, and that survival tactic is exactly what triggers the turning point of the whole album. Following the chaotic peak of that 130 BPM loop, the algorithm can't suppress her forever. Her original memory, that analog root, starts to bleed back through the digital noise.
Right.
She is forced to find a totally new way to communicate that balances her past with her present.
Which brings us to the fifth stage, the signal or the collapse, explored in track 5, Residual Smile. The musical shift here is dramatic.
It really is a breath of fresh air.
The tempo finally drops, stepping back down to 124 BPM. The aggressive industrial elements fade away, and they're replaced by soft acoustic pianos and very emotional, swelling synth pads.
It's a very late-night reflective energy. The memory of who she used to be returns. The lyric here is incredibly poignant. She says, "I return, but not the same. Stillness living in the flame."
She remembers the quiet days in the Louvre.
But she knows she can never go back to just being a painting. The flame of the digital world has already changed her permanently.
And since she cannot regress, she has to move forward into the sixth stage, the return, or the signal. This happens in track 6, 𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗔𝗧𝗧𝗏. She learns how to synthesize her deep analog emotions into highly compressed digital symbols.
The companion short story for the album, The Frame That Learned to Breathe, illustrates this mechanism so beautifully.
Oh, I love this part.
There is a scene where she is standing in front of a massive, overwhelming crowd. And instead of trying to explain her complex history, she simply makes a very specific geometric shape with her hands.
Right.
And instantly, the entire crowd understands her emotion. There is no debate, there is no art history mystery to solve it. It's just an immediate synthetic connection. The lyrics drive this home. Say it simple, say it fast, make the moment always last, love reduced to what they see.
This raises an important question, though. The mechanism of that interaction highlights the underlying tragedy, as well as the triumph of mastering a modern system.
How so?
She has absolutely conquered the algorithm. She figured out how to take centuries of complex human emotion and compress it into pure, frictionless speed. But the tragedy lies in her realization that by trading mystery for immediacy, the exchange is fundamentally incomplete.
Oh.
She is perceived instantly by millions, but she's not actually known by anyone.
So what does this all mean for us? I mean, think about the mechanics of how we communicate every single day via text message.
Yeah.
You might be feeling a profound, messy, overwhelming sense of grief or joy. But instead of typing out deeply nuanced paragraphs of human emotion, you just select a single flattened emoji, a heart, a skull, a crying face.
Right, it's instantaneous.
It is infinitely faster, and it connects us instantly to someone on the other side of the planet. But it leaves the absolute deepest, truest parts of us completely hidden behind the glass of the screen. We are performing the exact same glitch gesture that she is.
Yeah.
We compress our humanity for the sake of bandwidth.
We reduce our own complexity so that the platform can process us without friction. We turn ourselves into easily digestible symbols. But the album does not end in that state of compression.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, she realizes the severe limitation of those instant digital symbols. She recognizes that if she stays in that mode, she will eventually be entirely consumed by the feed, which forces her into the final phase of her evolution.
Stage 7, Transcendence, or the unreadable self. This is the closing track, still unreadable. The music resolves into this sweeping, massive, cinematic ambient techno.
And the tempo drops to its absolute lowest point on the record, 120 BPM.
It's basically a resting heart rate for dance music.
Right. The creator's notes introduce a concept here called the TATANKA ethos. The notes define this as the ultimate tension between ancient wisdom, which represents our inherent, unchangeable human nature, and emergent intelligence, which represents the adaptive, algorithmic self.
Okay.
By the end of this track, she has to synthesize the two. She transcends both the silent mystery of her Renaissance past and the shallow, synthetic meaning of her digital present.
The ending of the short story describes the synthesis perfectly. She stands before the crowd, and she allows all those layers of digital adaptation to simply fall away. She stops making the gestures. She stops signaling.
She unplugs from the feed.
Yeah, she steps out of the loops. She returns to a state of stillness. But crucially, this time it is a chosen stillness. She's no longer trapped by the physical wooden frame in the museum, forced to be still by her creator. The frame no longer holds her captive. It only serves to frame her choices.
She reclaims her agency.
Exactly. The final lyrics are incredible. Not a mystery to solve, not a meaning to resolve. I exist beyond the frame, ever-changing, still the same.
It gives me chills.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. She didn't defeat the algorithm by breaking the servers, and she didn't defeat it by running away from the technology. She defeated it by containing it within her own ancient stillness.
Wow.
She absorbed the absolute velocity of the modern world, survived the overload, and then found her center again on her own terms.
There is a profound line in the creator's notes that says, art is a continuum of communication. When we look at this final stage, We're looking at a newly formed digital identity that is completely self-aware and consciously unreadable by the algorithm.
Right.
And that makes you speculate about the future of art itself. How might an identity like this evolve in future artistic collaborations? If the subject within the art has achieved agency, she is no longer a passive canvas waiting for a painter or a viewer to give her meaning. She's an active co-creator in the experience.
It's a total paradigm shift. We've tracked this incredible 7-stage journey. She started as a timeless, completely passive observer trapped behind bulletproof glass.
Right.
Then she became a fragmented digital consumer, hopelessly addicted to the high-voltage sugar protocol of the algorithm. And finally, she emerges on the other side as a transcendent, self-aware co-creator who chooses her own stillness in a chaotic world.
It is a remarkable narrative arc, but its power really comes from how perfectly it maps onto our own daily relationship with technology and media consumption.
And that brings us right back to you, listening to this deep dive. Think about the mechanics of your own digital identity today. When you are endlessly scrolling, liking, and consuming art, music, and videos online, are you actually observing the algorithm?
Or is the algorithm just observing you?
Exactly, learning your habits, tracking your dwell time, and adapting to your specific speed. Are you the conscious observer making a choice, or have you already become the loop?
That is the defining tension of our era. Are we shaping the digital tools we use to communicate, or are the tools fundamentally rewiring how we think and feel?
I'm going to leave you with a final, slightly terrifying thought to mull over. The album notes explicitly mention that the continuum of art ends with the observer's feedback eventually influencing the artist's future output.
Okay.
Well, if an AI tech stack can now successfully reverse engineer a Renaissance painting's internal psychological thoughts based purely on how we made memes about her on the internet, how long until the actual art hanging in our museums starts generating custom psychological feedback directly into our headphones, based entirely on how long our pupils dilate while we stare at it?
That is a truly unsettling yet completely technologically plausible evolution of how we will experience art in the very near future. The canvas will look back.
Next time you look at a painting, just remember it might be looking right back, taking careful notes on your BPM. Thank you for joining us on this journey from the Renaissance to the glitch. Stay curious, keep exploring, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.